No one laughed louder than station overseer, KRR single quotes, THEL. His mandibles clicked in open amusement as he stood on the elevated walkway, overlooking the frontier settlement of Outpost Tarsiznine, a windswept rock orbiting a dim blue star. The laughter echoed sharp, insectoid, infectious. Others joined in, not cruelly, just amused, because below them, at the edge of the settlement, the lone human was building a second wall around his cabin. Not an energy barrier, not a thermal field, not a shield lattice, a wall dot again. Is he nesting? Krathel asked, antennae twitching. Pair-ups, humans, molt? The Avran engineer beside him a tall, feathered being named Scylla tilted her head. He already has insulation panels rated for -40 standard degrees. The habitation unit meets all safety regulations. Yes, K.R. Rothel replied, still watching the human work. Which makes this excessive. Below, Jonah Mercer ignored them all. He hauled another slab of composite plasteel into place, muscles burning beneath his thermal layers. The wind screamed across the plain, carrying ice crystals sharp enough to sting exposed skin. Jonah didn't look up, didn't wave, didn't explain. He just kept building. Jonah had arrived on Tarsiznine 6 months earlier, officially. He was a logistics contractor. Unofficially, he was what humans often became on alien frontier worlds, someone who didn't fit neatly anywhere else. TARSIS-9 was cold. Not dramatically, explosively cold like some ice giants. Just relentless. The kind of cold that crept into joints, cracked materials over time, and punished complacency. The native Avran avoided the surface during winter cycles. The Krothel huddled in heated hive structures. Even the hard-shelled Dravik preferred underground installations. Humans, however, had volunteered. Jonah had been one of them. He'd taken one look at the climate reports and nodded. Yeah, I can make that work. The aliens had exchanged glances at that. Humans said things like that a lot. The first wall had been standard, prefabricated panels, structural supports, insulation layers, a modest heat exchanger tied into the settlement grid. Perfectly acceptable. The second wall was not. Jonah left a narrow gap between the original cabin and the outer structure. Not sealed, not pressurized, just empty space, air, dead air. He reinforced it with angled supports, slanted the roof slightly outward, and packed the base with crushed ice and polymer foam. When Cialy finally flew down to ask him about it, she was genuinely curious, not mocking Jonah. She said, wings folded tight against the wind. May I ask why? He wiped frost from his beard. Sure, she gestured at the half-finished structure. Why another wall? Jonah shrugged. Because one isn't enough. For what temperature drop? She asked, pulling up data on her wrist display. Jonah paused. Don't know yet. Cialy blinked. You don't know? Nope. Then why? Because the weather doesn't care about projections, Jonah said calmly. And neither does winter. The laughter spread after that, not openly hostile. Just jokes, humans and their rituals. Primitive construction methods, overcompensation, the Dravik security. Chief placed a friendly wager on how long the second wall would last before collapsing under snow load. The Avron architects debated whether humans simply enjoyed redundant labor. Jonah didn't argue. He worked every day. He reinforced the corners. added internal bracing, packed the dead space with removable insulation sheets. He installed manual vents, old school, mechanical, no electronics to fail. He stockpiled food, water, fuel. When Crothall noticed that Jonah had disconnected his heating system from the main grid, he scuttled down personally. "Human Jonah," the overseer said, "why isolate your heat source? Central distribution is more efficient." Jonah tightened a bolt. "Efficient systems fail all at once." Crothall frowned. "You anticipate failure?" Jonah looked up, eyes steady. "I expect it. The storm warnings came late, too late. Tar seasonings, star dimmed behind a curtain of roiling white as atmospheric pressure dropped faster than predicted. Wind speeds spiked beyond safe flight parameters. Sensors failed one by one, choked by ice and electromagnetic interference. The settlement went into emergency lockdown. Energy draw spiked. Then the grid shuddered and went dark. The blizzard hit like a living thing. Snow didn't fall, it attacked. Winds screamed at hurricane force, tearing at structures, driving temperatures down past -60, then 70, then lower still. Heat exchangers froze, power conduits cracked. The hive structures began to lose internal temperature faster than the Crothall could redistribute emergency. Power. Panic spread. "Seal all sectors," Crothall ordered, voice sharp with fear. "Reroute auxiliary. No, that's failing too." Sealy clutched a railing as the walkway shook. "The surface cabins, uninhabitable," someone said grimly. "Except one." Jonah's cabin didn't flicker. Inside the second wall, the wind howled, but it lost its teeth. The dead air gap trapped warmth. Snow piled against the outer structure, not crushing it, but insulating it further. Jonah moved calmly. He sealed vents, adjusted dampers, fed fuel into his independent heater. The temperature dropped, but slowly, predictably. He put on another layer and waited. Hours passed. Then the distress signal came, weak, fragmented. "KRR." Thell's voice crackled through the emergency band. "Human Jonah, if you can hear internal temperatures failing, multiple species, risk of casualties." Jonah didn't hesitate. He grabbed a rope, emergency packs, thermal blankets, and stepped into the storm. Visibility was near zero, but Jonah had marked his route weeks earlier. Simple stakes, reflective strips, old-fashioned and reliable. He moved from structure to structure, hammering on doors, guiding aliens toward his cabin. They came reluctantly at first, then desperately. K.R. Arthur arrived, carried by Todravik, his shell rimed with ice. Celia's feathers were stiff with frost. Others followed, dozens crowding into the space between Jonah's two walls. "It's warmer," Celia whispered. Jonah nodded. "That's the idea." They huddled there, packed tight, sharing heat, wrapped in blankets as Jonah distributed food and hot liquid. Outside, the blizzard raged onside. The temperature stabilized. The storm lasted 3 days. When it finally broke, the settlement emerged, battered and silent. Structures were damaged, systems offline, but there were no deaths, not one. K.R. Eichel stood outside Jonah's cabin afterward, staring at the snow-packed outer wall. "You anticipated this," he said quietly. Jonah shook his head. "No, I just planned for worse than expected." Crawthall turned his multifaceted gaze toward the human. Why? Jonah thought for a moment. Because where I come from, he said, winter kills the unprepared, and laughs at the overconfident. The overseer lowered his head, a gesture of deep respect. The Settlement Council wishes to revise construction standards, he said. They ask to incorporate your second wall design. Jonah smiled faintly, happy to help. No one laughed anymore. On Tarsus 9, new buildings had buffer zones, dead air spaces, redundant systems, manual overrides, and when the next human arrived and started reinforcing his shelter beyond regulation standards, no one questioned it. They simply nodded, because they had learned something important. Humans didn't build for average conditions. They built for the day everything went wrong, and survived it. Asterisk.